Kevin, I've been doing some testing with the rope runner and the rope wrench and making a couple of comparisons. I know I've heard you speak about the rope wrench and the rope runner being very similar. And what I'm looking for is somehow to make this bird a little bit smoother and a little bit easier to release. So what I did is I did some testing, and that'll be the second part of this video, but I put the Rock Exotica Enforcer in the link here to try to get numbers as to exactly how much work the bird was doing. I did the same thing with the Enforcer on the rope wrench to try to see what kind of work it was doing as well. I weigh 195 pounds when I'm hanging on my saddle, and what I determined is that the friction hitch, when used with the rope wrench, is in my case controlling about 65 pounds. The rope wrench itself is taking about 130 pounds. That's what makes this so desirable and so many guys like it. It makes it really smooth, better than even throwing your line up over a branch, because you're doing better than 50%. So the less weight you have on your friction hitch, the more controllable it will be, and also the less wear you'll have on your friction hitch. But the controllable part of this setup is in your friction hitch, and it's, in my case, 65 pounds when I did my test. Now, with the rope runner, the controllable part is the bird, and when I did my tests, I was getting about 85 pounds of force being placed on the bird. And if we could get that to be a smaller percentage, more in the 65 pound, at least for my weight, in a smaller percentage, I think it would make the bird a little bit easier to control and a little bit easier to release. And you wouldn't see guys having to put rubber up here to make that a little more comfortable on the hands, and I think it might be a little bit easier to release. And here's my thought process. There on your body down here on this friction plate, if you could take and maybe experiment with this, see what happens. But what if you put a little bit of a hump or a bow in this friction plate on the body? In other words, it would lift that line, and rather than getting all the wear up underneath this bollard and also next to the pulley, you would have more wear distributed over a greater part of the body, or over that friction plate, and also in the same way of getting more friction on this body. And the more friction you get on this body will give this bird less force that's needed. So I think it might be an idea as far as a redesign. Give it and see what happens. Also, I looked at that, and if you had just a little bit of a hump in there, it really wouldn't affect the tending too much, because when you do tend this, that pulley pulls away because of the way you've got the slots designed. The pulley pulls away and would still clear that hump. Also, I did some testing, and I put a carabiner through here and did a couple of descents. The carabiner was way too much, but it was amazing the difference in how it made this bird perform. It just made it so much easier. There was very little weight being put on the bird, and there wasn't enough weight actually, but the thought was having that carabiner go through there made a huge difference, and that would be similar to doing a hump in there. My point also is that on the rope runner, the big difference between the rope runner and the rope wrench is that on the rope wrench, your control is in your friction hitch. And your friction, the non-controllable friction, may I say, is coming from the rope wrench, but that's not the part you control. On the rope runner, you're getting a greater amount of friction coming off of the bird, but it is also the part that you're trying to control. So by shifting more of the weight away from the control and putting it on the friction plate, you would be getting a little closer to the performance that you might get from the rope wrench. I don't know how much more difficult it would be in making that little bit of a hump, but also if that were to be designed with a slight amount of hump and also a curvature this way, it might help keep the rope round rather than sometimes we get that where it flattens the rope a bit. Just a thought. Just seems like this part of that body would be pretty easy to put a little bit of a bow in it and a little bit of concave in the design there, and that might make a world of difference. I have this set up with a Rock Exotic Enforcer, and I set it to kilonewtons. We're showing 0 kilonewtons, and just for fun I have it recording on the graph with the iPhone. So we'll do a couple of cents and descents and see what we get. Okay, I've set up the rope wrench to make a comparison between that and the rope runner, and to also measure the friction that is actually applied by the rope wrench during normal use. I'm going to take a couple of cents and come down a couple times, and I'll have a record of it on the phone here and see what kind of a graph I get. It'll be interesting to see what the differences are. Settle into it nice and slow. There's 130, 25, 36, 40,